right, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Happy Sabbath, brothers and sisters. I'm Teacher Shaul, and to my right,
Officer Levi.
Today, we have the LSD, Lunar Sabbath Intervention. The Lunar Sabbath Intervention going on right now. All right. So basically what we're getting ready to get into is a much awaited class. A class that has been hanging in the balance for some time now. I believe since last summer. We dealt with the Lunar Sabbath before from a scriptural standpoint. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to attack it from a different angle this time. This time what we're going to do is we're going to approach the situation from a scholarly stance. Because they always say, you know, they tend to think that the Israelites, we don't read no books. They think that we do little to no real, true, hardcore research and studies. And this is how people end up deceived and all into madness. So today, we're going to get them out of that psychotic drug, LSD, the Lunar Sabbath Doctrine. Okay? And we're going to have an intervention for them today. Because our people need help. Okay? This is sin-sick people. And the Bible is the medicine. All right? So today, we're going to have this LSD, Lunar Sabbath Doctrine Intervention. And we're going to clear it all up today. All right? So, let's go ahead and start off with Psalms 119, verse 104.
Psalms chapter 119, verse 104. Through thy precepts I get understanding. Therefore I hate every false way.
Therefore I hate every false way. I'm going to tell you what I don't like. I don't like somebody playing games with the Sabbath. Why? Because the Most High said that the Sabbath day is a sign between him and his people, him and his children. The Sabbath is not a day to be played with. Okay? I asked a question. If anybody had the opportunity to see the trailer, it's up on YouTube, for the LSD intervention. The question that I posed is, does the Most High require us to play musical chairs with the Sabbath day? Do you just go round and round and round about, and wherever it stops, that's where you sit down and find rest? Okay, it's going to be Tuesdays this month. Next month, it'll be Thursday. The Most High wants us to play musical chairs. He's not the author of confusion. He's going to give us exactly what we should do and what we shouldn't do and lay it down flat out for us to understand. The scriptures is of no private interpretation. So we're going to address that first and foremost. All right? Go to Exodus chapter 20, verse 8. Let's get that first. All right? We're going to get into the importance of this thing. Also, in today's class, we're going to not just smash the Lunar Sabbath doctrine. We're also going to address those that say, all in a nutshell, those that say, oh, you know how we tell the Christians, oh, y'all go worship on the day of the sun with the Sunday thing, right? Which is true. And it's also a documented fact that the Sabbath was changed from so-called Saturday to Sunday. Where's the documented proof of it changing from anything else from a lunar Sabbath to Saturday? Where's that proof at? Show your proof. Because I'm getting ready to drop missiles today. It's a long-awaited class. So we're going to kill that whole idea that the Sabbath is based after or called after Saturn or Saturn Day. I'm going to show you that they chose to name we already was calling it the Sabbath. They just chose to name it Saturn Day. It's like if we say it's the Sabbath right now, and then 200 years later, somebody call it Mercury Day. So, because you chose to change the name of the day that we already observed, we following you? No. We're going to smash all those lies today. Through history, through the scholars, Philo, Josephus, and others. You know what I noticed? Everybody needs a white man to validate everything. If the white man don't say it, they're not going to believe it. So guess what I'm going to do today? I'm going to tell you what the white man said. We're going to go to the white man. That's what y'all like to hear. We're going to let the white man tell you about it then. Since y'all hang on to this every word and you don't want to believe somebody like me that look just like you. Exodus chapter 20, verse 8.
Exodus chapter 20, verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy works. But The seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God.
The seventh day. What I'm going to show y'all today is that majority of the idiots that follow the lunar Sabbath doctrine, ask them when their Sabbath is. The scriptures say that the Sabbath is the seventh day, but yet they observe theirs on the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th. When did the 8th day of the week become the Sabbath? Okay, don't worry. We're going to address all that today. All right? Go to Genesis chapter 2 real quick. Let's set the stage. Let's find out something. We already went through this when we dealt with what day is the Sabbath, when we smashed it before. But this is part 2, because a lot of our people are still addicted. So we have to stage an intervention. We have to go in and shake them up out of this madness. Genesis chapter 2, start at verse 1.
Genesis chapter 2, verse 1.
Come on.
Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day.
On what day?
Seventh day, God ended his work which he had made. And he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made.
Read on. Verse 3.
Verse 3. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work.
He blessed the seventh day, not day 8. That's simple. Let's continue on though. Watch this. Let me show you guys something. Because when you say that we have to keep switching up the Sabbath day, the day that the Most High made hollow, you know what you're doing when you do that? When you say that the Sabbath changes every month according to the cycles of the moon, you're now making the moon a memorial to the creative rest of Yahweh. Okay, you're making you're making a memorial of his rest that he created into a memorial of the moon. So the moon dictates this now, and not the Most High, who said the seventh day. That sounds like madness. Sounds like you off into some pagan idolatry type of a doctrine there. All right. I'm going to start going straight into it. It is often said that our Israelite habit of observing the seventh day, the Sabbath, the Shabbat, was changed by the Romans. This is a rumor you're going to hear on social media. After this class, so nobody even get confounded in regards to this matter. They said that the Romans changed this. And this is the reason that the Jews currently honor Saturday as is found on the Gregorian calendar. We've already been down this road before and showing that with the change of the Gregorian calendar. And give me that book right there off the desk, Hari. Which day is the Sabbath? Right there behind your computer. Give me that real quick. Nothing changed but the date. The D-A-T-E, not the D-A-Y, when the calendar changed. But you will let a so-called learned Negro who will come and they'll tell you, oh, no, no, it's not what happened. October A.D. 1582. Wednesday was October 3rd. Thursday was October 4th. Friday became October 15th when the calendar changed in 1582. The day of the week didn't change. The date did. Like right now today. According to Esau's calendar, today is what? The 25th of March. Right. So what if we say tomorrow is the 31st? Did that change tomorrow from being Sunday? Hell no. Stop being foolish. September, the next time it changed, in AD 1752. Oh, this book is called Saturday or Sunday, which is the Sabbath. That's the name of this book. We deal with all scholarship today. September AD 1752. Tuesday was September 1st. Wednesday was the 2nd. Thursday was the 14th. That didn't change the day. It changed the date. So stop coming on the Gregorian calendar when it switched up. That ain't even a damn thing when they changed the date. D-A-T-E. We learned that in grammar school. Stop being simple. We're smashing all false doctrines today. Now go to 2 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 5. Lunar Sabbath doctrine. Watch this. Let me show that again for the viewers. All 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5. Understand something. There's no way on earth that Sabbath keepers around the world could be convinced to change their day of worship without it showing up somewhere in history. Let's be real here, man. You mean to tell me that the Shabbat switched up from following the Lunar and that don't appear nowhere in history? It's not recorded that that happened? Like how we can go and show the change that happened during the Council of Nicaea? We can show that. Show me where it changed. Read what you got.
2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5.
Come on.
Casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalted itself against the knowledge of God.
The knowledge of the Most High said what? That the seventh day is the Shabbat. Not day 8. Wait till I show y'all this calendar. And I'm going to show y'all something. Oh, man. Y'all in store for a treat today. All right. The change that happened from Sabbath to Sunday shows up frequently, abundantly, throughout history. And prove that by the very appearance that the change occurred. But on the contrary, we can't say the same when it comes down to saying this about Saturday, though. Watch this. Go to Luke chapter 4. When we research this topic from a historical standpoint, we really truly don't need to go any further than the 1st century AD. That's the truth. We really don't need to go any further than that during the time of Hamashiach. Because you have to understand, that happened. Y'all said the Romans changed this. That was the Roman captivity. So I'm going to take y'all back then. Let's find out what day of the week that Hamashiach observed. You wicked Negroes. Luke chapter 4, verse 16, man.
Luke chapter 4, verse 16. And he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. And as his custom he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up for to read.
And stood up for to read. So we see here clearly that the Messiah observed the Sabbath. Let's see that he have his time frames right or wrong. We're going to get to that. But the disciples that came after him, the apostles, the first century disciples followed suit. He went into the synagogue same way like we told him out there at camp today. You said you'll follow Christ, you have to follow his example. Go to Acts chapter 17. Let's see this example. And then we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of this thing. Lunar Sabbath doctrine intervention. If you know somebody is trapped in the Lunar Sabbath doctrine, give them this video. The video will be up on YouTube as well. Acts chapter 17, verse 2. Yes.
Acts chapter 17, verse 2. And Paul, as his manner was, went unto them.
Wait, remember, he said as his manner was. Remember, Christ went into the temple in Luke 4 and 16 as his custom was. Now we're hearing about Paul. He followed in his footsteps. Read.
And 3 Sabbath days reasoned with them out of the scriptures.
So he went into there and reasoned with them out of the scriptures. So that also goes yet a cut again for those that didn't like the fact that we rolled up in the church to try to reason with them out of the scriptures.
Right.
That's the custom. That's the manner of our people. It's what grown men do. Now, so you have to be telling me that Paul and the disciples had it wrong, or maybe they were following the lunar calendar. Let's find out. Go to Daniel chapter 7. I want Daniel 7 and 25. They try to use this to say, this is how y'all end up worshiping on Saturn Day. Okay. I'm going to use it on the flip side now, and I'm going to show and prove that y'all follow Babylonian customs with the Lunar Sabbath doctrine. Uh-oh. Cue the thunder and lightning. Let's go.
Daniel chapter 7, 25.
Come on.
And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws.
Times and laws. Tell you that the Sabbath ain't on the 7th day anymore. Go ahead.
And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time.
Now watch this. Take these notes. I'm going to give y'all some names. I'm going to be throwing some names out there. I did my research, and I recommend that you do yours as well. There's a man by the name of Jonathan David Brown. Jonathan, J-O-N-A-T-H-A-N. David Brown, like the color, B-R-O-W-N. He wrote a book in 1998 called Keeping Yahweh's Appointments. Keeping Yahweh's Appointments. In this book, he described the practice of the lunar Sabbath. As a matter of fact, he actually credited the observance of the lunar Sabbath. He's actually credited with being the first Sabbath keeper in the 20th century to begin the practice of counting the Sabbath from the new moon day rather than using the modern 7-day week. Go to Proverbs 3:31. For all these awakened, enlightened, conscious Negroes who claim to be awake to the knowledge of this truth. Proverbs 3:31.
Proverbs chapter 3, verse 31. Envy thou not the oppressor, and choose none of his ways.
Choose none of his ways. But yet you Negroes want to fall off into a lunar Sabbath doctrine because your oppressor said so. Oh, that's interesting. Nobody else had fell off into this madness before that. Tell you the Edomite to show up and say, hey, guess what, guys? I think that when you worship Yahweh, all right, keep on listening to them crackers if you want to. He's the one that's credited with being the first person in the 20th century to even push that doctrine. Jonathan David Brown. Go to Acts chapter 13. Acts chapter 13. I want verse 42 through 44. I know I said I won't give many scriptures, but y'all know you got to get some.
32.
Acts chapter 13, verse 42 through 44.
Acts chapter 13, verse 42. And when the Jews were gone out of the synagogue, the Gentiles besought that these words might be preached to them the next Sabbath.
Why they ain't say, come preach it to us the very next day, the first day of the week? For all you first day of the week churchgoers. Why did they say, come and preach this to us next Sabbath? That's the real true day of worship and observance. Read on.
Now, when the congregation was broken up, many of the Jews and religious proselytes followed Paul and Barnabas.
That's what dude was asking about Barnabas out there in camp. Read.
Who speaking to them, persuaded them to continue in the grace of God.
Mm-hmm.
And the next Sabbath day.
And when?
The next Sabbath day.
Okay.
Came almost the whole city together.
Now the whole city they came together on the Shabbat? Okay, go ahead.
To hear the word of God. But.
That's good. To hear the word of the Most High. So all praises. No doubt. Why they ain't come at the beginning of the week? On Sunday. We're going to find out about the Shabbat. I want to now take you into the Dead Sea Scrolls. I know you really won't hear too many Israelites to even tap into that topic. But ever since I started digging into them, I've been like, this is interesting. The Dead Sea Scrolls are considered by scholars to be authored by the Essenes, a sect in the 1st century. I told y'all we dealing with 1st century Judaism. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, there are a number of extra-biblical scrolls which appear to shed light on what this sect believed and practiced. Understanding what they believed can be helpful in determining whether or not the lunar Sabbath was being observed by mainstream Judaism at that time. Watch this. It goes on to say that it is generally undisputed, even by lunar Sabbatarians, that the authors of these scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls, did not, I repeat, they did not, the authors of the Dead Sea Scrolls did not keep a lunar Sabbath. That's critical. Because if you do your research, you will see that it's claimed that the Essenes were very strict about the law. It's even rumored that John the Baptist came from Qumran in that region, because they practiced ritualistic purification by water and lived very primitively off the land. Okay? Now, it says it's generally undisputed about this fact that you're going to very rarely hear somebody try to come against the fact that it's said that the Essenes, or the authors of the Dead Sea Scrolls, did not keep a lunar Sabbath. Rather, the Calendrical. How do you want to pronounce it? That's your business. Calendrical. It had to do with calendar. I can tell you that, because that's like the root word. Calendrical. Calendrical. I got it. Calendrical scroll. Okay. Shows that they observed a recurring 7-day weekly cycle. I can't make this stuff up. Do the research for yourself. It said that it seems the authors of the Dead Sea Scrolls, they observed a recurring 7-day weekly cycle based on the calendrical scroll, independent of moon phases. Oh man, the cannon's about to start going off now. And there is really, literally, you have to be a fool. I know nobody that even disputes that fact. That's a fact. Both the calendrical scroll and the Songs of the Sabbath sacrifice confirm that. The other one is called Songs of the Sabbath sacrifice. They both confirm that the Essenes, the authors of the Dead Sea Scrolls, that they themselves observed a recurring 7-day weekly cycle for the Shabbat, and that they did not go based on the phases of the moon and observe a lunar Sabbath. First century we're dealing with right here. I'm not going nowhere outside of that. Watch this. Now let's get into something right here. Let's because I said we're gonna show what the white man said, right? Who better than to know what happened during the time of the Romans than the Romans? We're going to ask the Romans what happened. Watch this. All right. First and foremost, start that portion right there all the way down till you get here. And then you can stop. Well, stop here at that asterisk.
This is Roman historians and writers. The name Saturday/Day of Saturn originated with the pagans.
Originated with who?
The pagans.
Okay.
Not with the Jews.
Uh-huh.
The Jews repeatedly and unequivocally refer to the 7th day of the week as the Sabbath.
Facts. Read.
When it comes to determining whether or not the Jews of the first century kept the Sabbath using the lunar Sabbath, or, as I believe, a recurring weekly Sabbath, examining the records of Roman historians and other writers can be helpful.
Go ahead.
By the admission of lunar Sabbath keepers and clear historical records.
Clear historical records. Come on.
The Romans did not follow the moon phases.
The Romans didn't follow the moon phases. Come on.
When determining the weeks.
Uh-huh.
Or even the months.
Read on.
For that matter.
Uh-huh.
For this reason, we can look into the writings of Roman historians and other writers to see if the Romans associated the Jewish Sabbath with their Saturday/Day of Saturn.
So, this is what we get ready to do. We're getting ready to look at Roman historians and other writers to see if the Romans associated our 7-day Sabbath with their day of Saturn. That's going to be critical. History don't... See, when people come to this lunar Sabbath, they never come with no historical proof. Watch this. Read on.
If they did associate the Sabbath with their day of Saturn in the first century or before, this would be undeniable evidence that the Jew week and the Roman week were both kept on the same recurring weekly cycle, independent of the moon phases.
Basically, all the nutshell, what it shows is that, because they ain't weren't following the lunar calendar either. Our stance right now, since we putting the lunar Sabbath on trial, is that neither did the Jews during the first century or before. We're not going before that period because y'all said that the Romans changed it. We're going to show that they both, the Romans and us, followed a weekly cycle that had nothing to do with the moon. Nothing whatsoever. I'm not even going to go into the simplicity of it, where the moon was created on the fourth day and all that. So how do you get 3 days later, you got a Sabbath, and that's not 7 days, and it's based on new moon? That's simple. Now, if people even still arguing that, and that's madness. Watch this. Read that next portion.
Romans picked up the recurring 7 day of Romans picked up the recurring 7-day week from the Jews.
Wait, the Romans got their 7-day week from us. We get ready to prove that next through archaeology. Watch this. Come on.
Not the other way around.
Not what?
The other way around.
Read.
For 5 centuries or longer.
Wait, how long?
5 centuries or longer. The Romans had kept an 8-day week.
Whoa.
Sounds familiar.
The Romans kept an 8-day week.
So that's where they get that. 8, 15.
Somebody about to get cut with their pagan doctrine. The Romans kept an 8-day week. But watch this. Read on.
With the days being named by the letters of the alphabet A through H.
So they days when they had nothing to do with Saturday, Friday, Sunday, none of that. We talking about the Romans. Read.
They did not keep a 7-day week until they came into more contact with Sabbath-keeping Jews in the early centuries BCE.
Now, I'm getting ready to show y'all something right now. Getting ready to show y'all something right now. Give me a second to pull up this picture. All right. Show y'all something real quick here. Let me see that. Hopefully y'all can see this right here. If not, let me try to zoom it. I'm going to tell you what to look up. Type in F-A-S-T-I. F-A-S-T-I, so you can post it in the comments. Space A-N-T-I-A-N-T-E-S. Fasti Antiantis. Oh, man. Teacher. Oh, man. It's been overdue. Everybody been waiting for me to go ahead and go in about the lunar Sabbath. What this is the only known pre-Julian calendar still in existence today. Still in existence to this day. Okay? The Fasti Antiantis, the only known pre-Julian calendar still in existence, dating from 60 BC, found at the site of Nero's, N-E-R-O, found at the site of Nero's villa in Antium. This is the calendar they use. Dated from the time of Augustus the 15th, 63 BC to 14 AD. To Tiberius, 42 BC to 37 AD. This is the calendar that they had in use. The Fasti Antiantis, and it still exists to this day. Promote scholarship and less drama. That's how we get down over here.
They were using that before Christ.
So this was started off in existence pre-Christ. We as far back as 63 BC with the use by Augustus. From 63 BC to 14 AD, and then with Tiberius from 42 BC to 37 AD. All right. So now from there. All right. So now we're going to go to right there. Just hold that up. The book of Josephus. We're going to go to the book of Josephus now. Why Josephus? Simple. Let's see what the back of the book says real quick. Okay. Now I want you to read this right here. This top paragraph right there. Yep.
The back of the book of Josephus.
Go ahead.
The writings of Josephus, the first century Jewish historian.
Who was he again?
Jewish historian.
From what time period?
First century.
This is why I said let's go to Josephus. We're dealing with somebody who was a contemporary of the apostles, meaning he lived during that time. First century AD. Christ walked the earth. First century AD. The Romans was in control. First century AD. I had to know what was going on during that time frame because according to Luke 4:16, Christ observed the Sabbath. According to what we read in Acts 17, so did the apostles. So I want to know what Sabbath were they observing during the first century AD. Go ahead. Hit that Josephus portion right there.
Okay.
That's also, let them know, right, read that right there.
Say this?
Yep, say that first.
Out of the book of Josephus, Apion.
Apion is one of the books inside of Josephus. The complete works of Josephus contains many works. The Wars of the Jews, the Antiquity of the Jews, Apion. So this is what we're reading from right now. Okay? Go ahead, read that. 2:282-283.
Okay,
come on.
The masses have long since shown a keen desire to adopt our religious observances.
Wait. He said the masses, meaning everybody else, has done what?
Shown a keen desire to adopt our religious observances.
So we observe the seventh day, the Shabbat. Everybody want to do that. We wear fringes. Everybody want to do that. They have long desire to adopt our quote-unquote religious practices. Okay? Go ahead.
And there is not one city, Greek or barbarian, nor a single nation, to which our custom of abstaining from work on the seventh day has not spread.
Wait a minute. See, you gotta slow down on that one, put the emphasis on that thing. Because that might have went over somebody's head. Okay? There is not one city. Start there.
There is not one city, Greek or barbarian, nor a single nation, to which our custom of abstaining from work on the seventh day has not spread.
Everybody stole our observances. The custom of us resting on the Sabbath, everybody decided to start taking up days of rest based on what we were doing. Read on.
And where our fasts and the lighting of lamps.
Lighting of lamps, like the menorah, come on.
And many of our prohibitions in the matter of food are not observed.
But you see that? But they don't want to do that part. They don't do that part, though. All right? Now, I'm going to give you a time period. Write this down. Between the time frame of 70 to 84 CE, which is what they call Common Era, which basically is AD, Anno Domini, or after Christ. So we're talking about first century here. Between 70 and 84 AD, there's somebody named Frontius. Okay? Frontinus. Frontius. He was a Roman soldier who lived from 40 AD to 103 AD. And he wrote a book on military strategy called the Stratagematicon. 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 He wrote that in 84 AD. I'm about to read an excerpt of what he wrote. Now, this is a Roman soldier. He lived during this time period. Let's see what he had to say. This is from Frontius, the Stratagem 2.1 Point 17. He said, the deified Augustus Vespasian attacked the Jews on the day of Saturn, a day on which it is sinful for them to do any business. Remember what we said in the beginning of this thing. They associated their day with our day of observance. We already was calling it Sabbath. They called it Saturn day. I'm going to read it again. The deified Augustus Vespasian attacked the Jews on the day of Saturn, a day on which it is sinful for them to do any business. So you trying to tell me that Christ and the disciples on the day that they was observing was off? This first century. The day they was observing was the day that the Romans started calling Saturn day. The same way they called Saturday today. That was already the Sabbath. Let's continue. Maybe that's not enough. The original Latin version of this book, talking about the Grammaticon, has Saturnus for Saturn, confirming that the Romans associated the Sabbath day with their day of Saturn. It is this association that resulted in the seventh day of the modern week being called Saturday. It was already the Sabbath. They associated their day with our day of rest, thus calling it Saturn day. We didn't fall off and start observing Saturn day. It was a Sabbath. They just started calling it Saturn day. We didn't keep a lunar calendar, and neither did they. They had an 8-day week. We had a 7-day week. Then they switched up to a 7-day week. And they chose to call their 7th day Saturn day. It had nothing to do with us. We already called ours the Sabbath. The original Latin called it Saturnus. All right. Now, that book was written 14 years after Vespasian or Titus' destruction of Jerusalem. Remember, I said it was written 84 AD. The destruction happened in 70 AD. So you mean to tell me that within 14 years, it was a switch up and everybody just started keeping the bogus Sabbath? Stop playing. Just stop it right now. This obviously very strong historical evidence directly from a first century eyewitness tying in Sabbath with Saturday or Saturn day. All right? Read the next section. 63 BCE. God. Right here. This time frame that we're dealing with now is between what time?
63 BCE to 229 CE.
Or, in other words, 63 BC up to 229 AD. All right? Watch this. Who is this?
Cassius Dio.
This is another name for you. Cassius. Last name Dio. Cassius Dio. Who was he?
A Roman historian.
Come on.
Who lived from
circa
155 to 229 AD.
So, he was a Roman historian. The first account that we got was from a Roman soldier. Now, we're getting from a Roman historian. Let's find out. Read.
Using the historical annals of the Roman Empire, wrote about 3 battles which the Roman Empire had with the Jews.
So this Roman historian wrote about 3 different fights, 3 different battles that the Roman Empire had with the Jews. We're dealing with first century right now, y'all. Because they say that the Romans changed the Sabbath and gave us Saturn day. It's a lie. Read.
The first battle was during a time when Hyrcanus II and Aristobulus II, 2 brothers who were the offspring of the Maccabees.
So, we're dealing with descendants of Maccabees in his first battle that he wrote about. Okay, read on.
Were engaged in a dispute over who would rule.
That's not like Saddam's sons. They had that conflict. Usay and Pusay, they had that conflict of who's going to be next. Go ahead.
The Romans, through the actions of Pompey, came in and settled the dispute.
Here we go. Esau come in to, all right, guys, I'll settle this. Let's see what happened. Read on.
Siding with Heraclius, while speaking of Pompey's battle, the Sabbath is mentioned.
So, here it is. In his first mention, in his first battle, the Sabbath is mentioned. So, the setting of which it takes place is 63 BC. Okay. Here we go. BCE. Most of the city, and this comes from Cassius Dio, Roman history. Probably chapter 37, section 16, 1 through 4. So 37-16 or 37.16.1-4. And it comes from, again, Cassius Dio, Roman history. Most of the city, to be sure, he took without any trouble, as he was received by the party of Hyrcanus. But the temple itself, which the other party had occupied, he captured only with difficulty, for it was on high ground and was fortified by a wall of his own. And if they had continued defending it on all days alike, he could not have got possession of it. As it was, they made an excavation of what are called the days of Saturn, and by doing no work at all on those days, afforded the Romans an opportunity in this interval to batter down the wall. The latter, on learning of this superstitious awe of theirs, made no serious attempts the rest of the time, but on those days, when they came round in succession, assaulted most vigorously. Thus, the defenders were captured on the day of Saturn without making any defenses, and all the wealth was plundered. The kingdom was given to Hyrcanus, and Aristobulus was carried away. This is a historical fact. So wait a minute. So these first century Jews, the day that they observed, the Romans was calling the day of Saturn already. So did Christ observe the day of Saturn? Did the apostles observe the day of Saturn? They observed the Sabbath, which was called the day of Saturn. Let's not get it twisted. History shows that the day that we call the Sabbath, they were calling the day of Saturn. That's like today, it's Saturday. What if I start calling it basketball day? Do that change that it's the seventh day of the week? No. Do that change that it's a Sabbath? No. What if I start writing books and I say, Hebrew Israelites, they stop doing any work and they rest on basketball day? Did that mean that y'all follow because I said it was basketball day? No, I just called that day basketball day. Let's not be simple, man. So, the Romans took advantage of the fact that the Jews would not work on the Sabbath. So, they used that to attack them on that day. Just saying, we read that in the book of Maccabees. They attacked them on that day because they said, you know what, we shouldn't be doing nothing on the Sabbath. So they was chilling, getting slaughtered. Okay? Until they said, to hell with that. If we don't fight back, we're going to be wiped out. The Romans took advantage of the fact that the Jews would not work on the Sabbath. When was the Sabbath? The weekly Sabbath just so happened to coincide with the Roman day of Saturn. They called it the day of Saturn. The Jews called it the Sabbath, they say. So now you're going to tell us that right now we off into madness right now. Be careful what you say, because you're basically saying Christ was off into madness. He lived during the first century. The Jews before the first century, during and after, all observed the same window. The second battle, this battle number 2, the second battle listed by Cassius Dio occurred in 36 and is the one that resulted in the very first king Herod come into power. Oh man, here we go. All right. It says here, and I quote, the Jews, and this is from Cassius Dio, Roman History, 49.22.4-6. So the 49th chapter. All right, it says the Jews indeed had done much injury to the Romans, but they suffered far more themselves. The first of them to be captured were those who were fighting for the precinct of their God, and then the rest on the day, even then called the day of Saturn. I'm quoting this. It says, and then rested on the day, even back then, even then, called the day of Saturn. We read about what happened before Christ was even born. So when Christ kept the Sabbath, on the seventh day, y'all who believe the Lunar Sabbath doctrine say that Christ was off. Y'all saying Christ was off with the madness because he was following the 7-day week, a weekly Sabbath on the day of Saturn, quote unquote, and not according to the lunar cycle. Y'all need to repent. I'll continue reading, and I quote, and so excessive were they in their devotion to the religion that the first set of prisoners, those who had been captured along with the temple, obtained leave when the day of Saturn came around again, and went up into the temple and there performed all the customary rites together with the rest of the people. So the first prisoners captured by the Romans, they begged the Romans and say, please allow us leave. Allow us to be able to leave jail so we can go and keep the Sabbath. That's how devoted they were. But according to this Roman historian, he referred to it as the day of Saturn. Every time the day of Saturn came around. It was even then called the day of Saturn. They called it that. I'll continue reading. These people entrusted to a certain Herod to govern, but Antigonus he bound to a cross and flogged, a punishment no other king has suffered at the hands of the Romans, and afterwards slew him. All right? Pick up, go ahead, Officer Levi. No, Con.
Note that Cassius Dio reports the Jews as keeping customary rites.
That's what Cassius Dio related. He said that the Jews were keeping customary rites. Read on.
At the temple on the day even then called Day of Saturn.
Even back then. Customary rites. Even back then on the day that was called the Day of Saturn. Read on.
This indicates that the Sabbath wasn't only called the Day of Saturn during his lifetime, but it was called the Day of Saturn back in 36 BC.
That's before Christ.
Well before Yeshua was born in Bethlehem.
So, that was long before he was born. They already called it the Day of Saturn. But yet he came along and observed the Sabbath on the seventh day. Somebody got some explaining to do.
Please.
Read on.
Next, he records that the 70 AD Jerusalem destruction was on the Sabbath.
Whoa. This Roman historian said that the destruction of Jerusalem happened when?
70 AD. Jerusalem destruction was on the Sabbath.
Go ahead.
Which he once again calls the day of Saturn.
Which he once again calls the day of Saturn. So he showed you historically before Christ was called the day of Saturn. And even during his time, it was called day of Saturn. Even after Christ. 70 AD, it was called the day of Saturn. To the Romans. 70 AD to 229 AD is a date. This is Cassius Dio, Roman History, 65.7.2. Thus was Jerusalem destroyed on the very day of Saturn. The day which even now the Jews reverence most. This was 70 AD, this was said. What was going on then? Somebody got some explaining to do. I'll continue. From that time forth, it was ordered that the Jews who continue to observe their ancestral customs should pay an annual tribute of 2 denarii to Jupiter Capitoline. In consequence of his success, both generals received the title of imperator, but neither got that of Judacius. Although all the other honors that were fitting on the occasion of so magnificent a victory, including triumphal arches, were devoted to them. A triumphal arch like the Ark of Titus that's in Rome right now. They put that up in like 82 AD. All right, read on.
So his report is that the Jews kept the Sabbath on the day of Saturn. From 63 BC.
From 63 BC.
Up until his day. No later than 229 AD.
Come on.
His report also agrees with Frontius,
that soldier, that Roman soldier. So we're saying this Roman historian, Cassius Dio, his account lines up directly with what that Roman soldier said too. Read.
Of accounts of the 70 AD battle.
Now, let's look around 100 AD. The historian Cornelius Tacitus, I don't know, these heathen bastard names is hard. Tacitus. Okay. We talking between 56 AD and approximately 117 AD is when he lived. After suggesting that the Jews kept the Sabbath out of laziness, he also associated the Sabbath with the Roman idol Saturn. And I quote, and this is from the Histories, Book 5. It's called the Histories, Book 5. I quote, they are said to have devoted the 7th day. I'll say that again. Even though he calls it, they are said, talking about the Jews, to have devoted the 7th day to rest, because that day brought an end to their troubles. Later, finding idleness alluring, they gave up the 7th year as well to sloth. You know, we had that Sabbath, that land Sabbath. Others maintain that they did do this in honor of Saturn. Others maintain that they do this in honor of Saturn. Either because their religious principles are derived from IDAEI, whatever, who are supposed to have been driven out with Saturn. Some Greek mythology. Okay? And become the ancestors of the Jewish people, or else because of the 7 constellations which govern the lives of men. The star of Saturn moves in the topmost orbits and exercises peculiar influence, so on and so forth. What we wanted out of here was the fact that he said that we were devoted to the 7th day to rest. The 7th day. That's recurring. Read. Again.
Okay. From the Histories.
No, I mean, read that portion, that next portion. Again, down at the bottom.
Okay. Again, the fact that a pagan associated Sabbath keeping with Saturn demonstrates that the Roman week's day of Saturday, was concurrent with what Yahweh calls the Sabbath.
Tacitus
is an eyewitness from the 1st century who has no axe to grind.
This is what the scholar says. This guy has no axe to grind. Meaning, what does he have to gain by saying this? He's an eyewitness during the 1st century. What does he have to gain by saying that the day that we call the Sabbath just so happened to be in direct alignment with the day that the Romans called Saturn Day? He has nothing to gain by saying that. He could have said that our Sabbath was any other day. They had nothing to do with the Roman Saturday. Obviously, we were already observing the 7th day. It's common sense. Read on.
In regards to when the Sabbath should be observed, He wrote this a mere 30 years after the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem.
This is now, we're talking 100 AD. Okay, 30 years after the temple has been destroyed. Now he comes and writes this. Y'all already kicked out behind. What do you have to gain by making this statement? Nothing. Now, the next guy I'm getting ready to bring out is a guy named Tibulus. T-I-B-U-L-L-U-S. I don't think it's like, damn, this is boring. This is why everybody follows the Lunar Sabbath doctrine. Because they won't take the time to sit down and actually look into it. Because it's boring. Tibulus, T-I-B-U-L-L-U-S. He was a Latin poet who lived from 54 BC to 19 BC. Pre-1st century AD. Pre-Christ. Tibulus references the Sabbath in one of his writings. The poet is quoted by J. Hugh, H-U-G-H, Michael, in his paper entitled The Jewish Sabbath in the Latin Classical Writers. So this guy named J. Hugh Michael wrote a paper entitled The Jewish Sabbath in Latin Classical Writers. In that paper, he quoted Tibulus, the Latin poet. Quote, this is what he writes in the journal. Tibulus, again, gives us a glimpse of the influence of the Sabbath on the Romans. Wait a minute, I thought it was the other way around. Tibulus, again, gives us a glimpse of the influence of the Sabbath on the Romans. This is direct quotes I'm reading here. From the Jewish Sabbath in Latin classical writers. The poet, sick in a foreign land, complains of his loneliness. Neither mother nor sister has he there to nurse him, nor is Delia with him. She, who had inquired of all the gods before permitting him to leave the city, says Tibulus. Here's what Tibulus says here. And this comes from book 1 of his writings. Okay? Looks like the 3rd chapter, probably 13th through the 18th sections or verses. It's broken down the same way how you will see the same number and lettering system like you'll find in the works of Josephus are also in the works of Philo. That's why we're saying point this, point that, 12.4, point whatever. It's the same, it's the Loeb numbering system, L-O-E-B. All right? He says, all promised a return, yet did nothing stay her from looking back in tears and terror on my journey. Yea, even I, her comforter, after I had given my parting charge, sought still in my disquiet for reasons to linger and delay. Either birds or words of evil omen were my pretext, or there was the holy day of Saturn to detain me. Read what you got. The day of which?
The day of which the poet speaks is, of course, the Saturday.
That's what he's speaking of. Go ahead.
Or, as Postgate puts it, the Jewish Sabbath. On which no work was to be undertaken.
You see that? One person calling it Saturday, another person calling it the Sabbath. The same way you call it Saturday today, but you still know that it's the Sabbath. It's the same thing going on back then. We was calling it the Sabbath, everybody else was calling it Saturday. That's their business what they call it. Read.
And the implication is clear that unwillingness to set off on a journey on the Sabbath day was no usual thing among the inhabitants of Rome.
No unusual thing.
No unusual thing among the inhabitants of Rome.
Remember, he said in the poem that he saw to set out on his journey, but he had to linger and delay. Read on.
For Tibulus is enumerating that Tibulus is enumerating the common reasons for the postponement of journeys of which he was only too ready to avail himself.
Go ahead.
The Jewish Sabbath in the Latin classical writers. J. Hugh Michael, Victoria College.
This is credential. Victoria College, come on.
Toronto, Canada.
Read on.
The American Journal of Semitic Languages and Literature.
This is my source. Just like when you were in school, especially high school and college, when you do research, it tells you to cite your sources. These are my references right here. Okay, read that again. The American what?
The American Journal of Semitic Languages and Literatures, Volume 40, Number 2, January 1924, page 117 through 124.
This is you want to hide something from a Negro, put it in the book, and then tell them the Sabbath is based off the moon. Because they're not going to go research it. They're not going to say, hey, let's go find out if it's actually lunar Sabbath doctrine is sound. Nobody does that. They just take it because it's in direct objection to what? What camps teach. You just want to be different. That difference is going to send your black ass to hell. Read on.
The day of which the poet speaks is, of course, the Saturday. Or, as Postgate puts it, the Jewish...
Drop down.
Oh, Salat. I read that. Okay. If the Jews in the first century kept the lunar Sabbath and only later adopted what you call the Roman week...
Right. So if in the first century the Jews kept the lunar Sabbath and then later on adopted the Roman week, go ahead.
Why do the first century Romans keep saying the Jewish Sabbath is on their day of Saturn?
Why would they keep saying that? You keep trying to tell the rest of Israel that back then, even Hamashiach Yahushua was observing the lunar Sabbath. So why did the people that lived back then kept saying something different than you who live today? These are primary sources, straight from the horse's mouth. Now it's about to get real. Right.
Count to Pentecost.
This is my part where I want to go into right here, right now. I want to show y'all something. It's about to get real interesting now. Because if you observe the lunar Sabbath doctrine, guess what? You can't observe the Feast of Weeks. You can't observe Pentecost. I'm going to show you why. Because it don't add up. That's why. All right, read what you got.
Okay, count to Pentecost. Lunar Sabbath contradicts how the Feast of Weeks is commanded to be observed. We are told to count 7 Sabbaths from the Sabbath that occurs during the Feast of Unleavened Bread.
Read that again.
Lunar Sabbaths contradicts how the Feast of Weeks is commanded to be observed.
If you observing the lunar Sabbath, it's contradictory to how we're told to observe the Shabbat.
We are told to count 7 Sabbaths from the Sabbath that occurs during the Feast of Unleavened Bread.
So, 7 Sabbaths. 7 times 7 is 49. Go ahead.
This would consist of 49 days. Then it says that we would arrive at 50 days if we count to the day after the 7th
On the
Sabbath.
morrow after the 7th Sabbath. 7 times 7 is 49. Plus 1 is 50. That's how you get the word Pentecost. It's a Greek word that means 50th day. Okay? Was that it? Come on. So let's look at this what we have up on screen right now. We already know. First month of a pig, right? According to the lunar Sabbath doctrine. I ain't got my pointer joint. You got it for me?
It should be in here.
According to Japan. According to the lunar Sabbath, this is how they observe it, right? You get a new moon. First day of the month, they say. Right? Then they count 7 days after that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is how they get the 8th being their Sabbath. They don't count the first day. They They count day 2 as day 1. And then the 8th day becomes their 7th day. It's madness, I know. Sounds foolish. All right. This is how they end up with the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th. So we have all of those dates for them. Lunar Sabbath keepers highlighted in red right here. All right. Watch this. So, here we go. We're in the month of Abib, right? No doubt. So, and we're going to start off, and you remember, you have to count 7 Sabbaths. All right? Watch this. So, now, you got here, well, from the 14th to the 15th is the feast. Right? So you're supposed to start counting from that point on. All right? Now, once you start counting from that point on, you get to the next. That's cool, Harvey. You get to the next Sabbath. Right? So the next one will be the 22nd. That's 7 days, right? From the 15th to the 22nd. 7 days. Right? Remember, you got to count 7 Sabbaths. So I'm about to go wrong real quick here. So, the 29th, that's the 14th day, right? Now, wait a minute. We're going to run into a situation. Why? Because most months only have 29 and 30 days. Lunar, based on lunar cycle. It could be 29 and a half days. You can't split a day in half. All right? We still got to count these days outside of this, though. All right, but we get ready to go. This is number 1, represents their new moon again. That starts their week. We can't ignore this day right here. This 30th day becomes the 15th day. Their first day becomes day 16. When you get to, now we're in the 2nd month now, right? Now we get here to the 8th, their Sabbath again. We're now 23 days in. We're 23 days in now. You go to the next Sabbath on the 15th. We're 30 days in now. That's 23 plus 7. That's 30. Keep on going to the 22nd. That's their next Sabbath. I'm counting their Sabbaths. You got to count 7 according to the scripture. So I'm counting their Sabbaths. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Uh-oh. We got a problem. On the 29th here, we run into day 44. Okay. Now, new moon, all praises. Wait a minute. The new moon's day 45 now. Start counting for your Sabbath again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The scriptures say, oh, excuse me, Salakia. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So, remember, the feast kicked off right here, 14, 15. Passover is at 14th at even. You got to count. Read that again. How do you number? Well, where is that? How many Sabbaths?
7 Sabbaths. From the Sabbath that occurred during the Feast of Unleavened Bread.
The Feast of Unleavened Bread is kicked off right here. Now they counted 7 Sabbaths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Based on their layout. 15, 29, 8. 15, 20, 22nd, 29th, 8. Based on their layout. I count 7 Sabbaths, I get to the 8th. But the Feast of Pentecost is 7 Sabbaths, and then what else we don't?
And okay, then it says that would arrive at 50 days if we count the day after the 7th Sabbath.
So, if we count the day after their 7th Sabbath, now remember, now all the way over here, their 50th day is here now. We already passed their 50th day. Okay? We count 7 Sabbaths. The feast starts here. 1. I got a number. 7. That's 7 days. 14. You keep going. But they're not accounting for, because their new moon, they don't count that day. The lunar Sabbath doctrine is BS. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Sabbaths will get you 44 days. And then After that, I guess tomorrow, I don't know how to break. They chart down, get you 45 days. Day 7 Sabbath, or get you on the 8th outside of the 50th day. They can't even observe Pentecost. You cannot even observe the Pentecost. Read on. The Feast of Weeks.
Lunar Sabbath contradicts how the Feast of Weeks is commanded to be observed. We are told to count 7 Sabbath from the Sabbath that occurs during the Feast of Unleavened Bread.
God, thank you. So now from there, here we go. The Feast of Weeks does not fit at all into the lunar Sabbath model that they have laid out. In scriptures, the Most High said that when we count 50 days, we will count to the day after the 7th Sabbath. Based on a breakdown, you can't do that with the above, with the lunar Sabbath calendar. You can't do it. It's impossible for the 50th day to be the day after the 7th Sabbath if you follow the lunar Sabbath doctrine. It's impossible. Why? Because in 7-week time period, they're going to run into the end of the first month, which they include extra new moon day. If you count those days, you're going to come up with more than 50 days that you need for the Pentecost. You're going to end up with more than that. Now, another thing that I'm not going to deal with today is Exodus chapter 16. They love to run to that. I'll say that for part 3. I'm waiting for the rebuttal on this, and then part 3, I'm going to get into Exodus chapter 16 to discredit your whole theory. Starting with verse 1. Starting with verse 1. That's when they want to deal with the manna. On which day was the manna given? Okay. Real quick. Exodus chapter 16, verse 1. Watch this, though. The manna was given every week. You collected enough for 1 day, 6 days, 5 days. On the 6th day, you collect enough for 2 days because you're going to need it for the 7th day. Right? Watch this. So in Exodus, it tells us that the manna fell for those 6 days, right? With the double, go to Exodus 16, I want verse 35. With a double portion that fell down on the 6th day because none was going to fall on the 7th day or the Sabbath day. This went on continuously for 40 years. Read what you got.
Exodus chapter 16, verse 35. And the children of Israel did eat manna 40 years until they came to the land inhabited.
So there it is, laid out. They did it for 40 years. So week after week, for 40 straight years, the Most High gave them manna for 6 days. Okay. Watch this. Nothing is mentioned in there about an interruption in this weekly manna cycle. Every 4th week by a couple of additional days at the end of the month when the new moon reset the whole week. Why don't we read about that part? Right. Oh man. I got critical questions now. Because based on the lunar Sabbath doctrine, at the end of the month, you end up with these extra days when the whole cycle reset. Again, they don't count day 1 when the new moon. They count day 2 and start 1, 2, 3, and that's how they count their Sabbath. We don't read about there being any break in the scriptures from gathering manna for 6 days and resting on the 7th. It don't say, and then there was 2 other extra days. We never read that. So ask yourself this question. Did Israel starve for a few days? It sounds foolish, don't it? It sounds real silly. Did Israel starve for a few days at the end of the month because of additional Sabbath days or non-work days? That's a question you should be asking yourself if you follow the lunar Sabbath doctrine or you lean in that way. The other question is did it mean that a quarter of the time, out of these 40 years, did it mean that a quarter of the time Israel didn't get nothing? Or Israel, some of the time, didn't get 6 days, but they got 7 days, 8 days, or 9 days to gather manna? What scripture is that? scripture is that? Because something has to account for these other days that y'all call it Sabbaths too. Y'all got extra Sabbath days lined up. So did they go hungry for 2-3 days? Or what, did they gather manna for 7 or 8 or 9 days? It makes no sense. Your doctrine has too many holes in it. The Babylonian calendar, that's what I'm going to get to next. The Babylonian calendar was lunisolar, with years consisting of 12 months. Remember I made the statement at the beginning. Y'all follow the Babylonian madness. Counting from the new moon of every month. Research it. You want to talk about who following who? You follow the customs of Babylon. Babylon had a calendar that had 12 months. It's starting with the new moon of every month. It's how they counted their calendar. So who you following? You following the Babylonians. You off into madness with the lunar Sabbath doctrine. Wait, I'm not done yet. It's more. The Babylonians celebrated every 7th day as a holy day. Go look it up. Based on the lunar Sabbath. Go look it up. Can't make this stuff up. But you niggas too lazy to do it. The Babylonians had a 12-month calendar based off the new moon with a 7th day that they call a holy day. Based on a lunar Sabbath. Y'all follow the Babylonians. On every 7th day, offerings were made to a different deity. Yeah, here comes the research. Merodach and Ishtar on the 7th. They love some Ishtar, boy. Merodach and Ishtar on the 7th. Nergal, or Merodach is Merodach, and Ishtar on the 7th. Then on the 14th, it was for Nergal, Nergal, and Ninlil, Ninlil. I can't make this stuff up. And then on the 21st, it was for Shamash and Sin. And then on the 28th, it was for Enki, Enki, and Mah, Mah. Y'all niggas follow Babylonian customs, man. Tablets from the 6th century BC, reigns of Cyrus the Great and his son, Cambyses, Cambyses, gives validity to these dates. Well, it's written in stone. The Babylonian calendar has a lunation of 29 or 30 days. We follow the Enoch calendar. No, Negro, you follow the Babylonian calendar. Containing 3 7-day weeks and a final week of 9 or 10 days. Don't that coincide with the lunar Sabbath doctrine? At the end of the month, you get them extra days? Y'all follow Babylonian customs. That's a fact. Lunar Sabbath doctrine. Which ended the continuous 7-day cycle. Scripture, go to Revelation 17 real quick. Let me see what I want. Let me see. Yeah. People think it's a game. Yes. Let's start at verse 3.
Revelation chapter 17, verse 3. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness.
And this is where he's showing the judgment of the great whore that sit upon many waters, Babylon. Let's go.
And I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names.
Scarlet is red. It's a damn devil. Come on.
Of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns.
We already know those 7 heads represent those Edomite empires. Okay? Greece, Russia, France, Spain, Britain.
was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls.
Go ahead.
Having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, and abominations of the earth.
And abominations of the earth. This lets you know, this is the last book of the Bible. This lets you know that Babylon's influence was going to carry on and carry over. And you got Negroes today that's following the Babylonian calendar. They're 29, 30-day lunations. Anytime you talk to a LSD junkie, yeah, that's what I call them, the LSD, you know, they addicted to that thing. They always talk about lunations. That's the Babylonians. Yeah, the moon of the lunations and all that. Y'all on to madness. That moon worship, that's woman worship. Maybe that's not enough for everybody. Let me get a couple of key points real quick. This comes from the New Bible Dictionary on an article based on calendar. The New Bible Dictionary. It states, and I quote, in general, the Jewish calendar, and I'm reading it as is, I'm not going to substitute the word Jewish, I'm just reading it. This is a quote. In general, the Jewish calendar in New Testament times, at least before AD 70, followed the Saducean reckoning, since it was by that reckoning that the temple services were regulated. Or the Sadducean, Sadducean. Okay? Thus, the day of Pentecost was reckoned as the 50th day after the presentation of the first harvested sheaf of barley, i.e., the 50th day inclusive from the first Sunday after Passover. And it gives a reference of Leviticus 23 and 15. It reads on to say, hence, it always fell on a Sunday as it does in the Christian calendar. I can't make this stuff up. Here's another resource. This is called the New Testament era. Type this in, New Testament era, the New Testament era, the world of the Bible from 500 BC to AD 100. We promote scholarship over here at UKOIC. You're not going to pass off no false doctrine over here without us coming for it and chopping it up. The New Testament era, the world of the Bible from 500 BC to AD 100, is written by Bo Reich, B-O-R-E-I-C-K-E. Published by Fortress Press, Pennsylvania in 1981. This comes from page 188. That's what I'm talking about. And I quote, immediately after the subsequent weekly Sabbath came the morning of the day of first fruits, which had to be observed by the presentation of a sheaf, or a Hebrew word omer, in the temple. They give the reference, Leviticus 23 and 11. And which was also the day from which the Feast of Weeks, celebrated 50 days later, was calculated. It said immediately after the subsequent weekly Sabbath came the morning of the day of first. So wait a minute. Again, we see here, based on the New Testament era, this book was printed in 1981, it's page 188. The New Testament era, the world of the Bible from 500 BC to AD 100, states that we observe a weekly Sabbath. One more for y'all. The New Bible Dictionary, under the article Pentecost, says, the Sadducees celebrated it, meaning Pentecost, on the 50th day, inclusive reckoning from the first Sunday after Passover, taking the Sabbath of Leviticus 23:15 to be the weekly Sabbath. I don't know how many dictionaries, how many historians, how many poets, or anybody else I got to go to show and prove that the lunar Sabbath doctrine is full of holes and it's a fallacy. Okay? Again, so we got that from the New Bible Dictionary as well as the New Testament era, the Word of the Bible. All right? It says, their reckoning regulated the public observance so long as the temple stood. So even up until the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. And the church is therefore justified in commemorating the first Christian Pentecost on a Sunday. Why? Because that's how it's been done for centuries. Our people need to wake up. Come out of that madness of the lunar Sabbath doctrine. I'll be waiting for rebuttals so that way I can go ahead and drop the extra missiles that I have building up real quick. Okay. We got 30 minutes. Yeah, I got you. Real quick, I promise this. Shift gears. I said that in this class I will also show that the Sabbath begins at evening and not in the morning, because that's another bogus doctrine. Since we talking Sabbath, we might as well go ahead and punish it. Because you got brews out there like I'm trying to keep, what the sister said, I'm trying to keep the Sabbath yesterday. Sister, the Sabbath from sundown to sundown. You got Hebrews, I see them online, saying that the Sabbath is during the daytime on Saturday. Basically from sun up to sundown. I've heard all type of madness. Unscriptural. Watch this. Go to Exodus chapter 20, right? Or verse 8. I mean, not verse 8. Start at verse 10. We already know. Remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy, no doubt. Start at verse 10. I want 10 and 11.
Exodus chapter 20, verse 10. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within my gates. Thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it.
Okay, so we clearly see that he likened 6 days of work, and then he had the seventh day in which he rested. He ceased from his mighty works, from all his creations, all that labor. On the seventh day, rested, no doubt. Now, we already know our ways are his ways, our works are his works. All right? His length of days is not our same length of day equivalent. All right? However, let's see something. Let's go look at these 7 days real quick. All right? Give me Genesis chapter 1, verse 5. Genesis 1 and 5.
Genesis chapter 1, verse 5. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the even and the morning were the first day.
So, based on what we're reading right here, the evening and the morning were the first day. The evening and the morning was the first day. It ain't say the morning and the evening was the first day. It said the evening and the... See, you know what? And I think in math, they call that the order of operations. Ain't that what they call it? Right. Okay. Our people, they lack in that. They don't understand order of operations. They don't understand reading. They don't have reading comprehension skills. Because clearly it says that the evening and the morning were the first day. Drop down to verse 8.
Verse 8. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day.
The evening and the morning were the second day. Drop down to verse 13.
Verse 13. And the evening and the morning were the third day.
Drop down to verse 23.
Verse 23. And the evening and the morning were the 5th day.
Drop down to verse 31.
Verse 31. And God saw...
I'm sorry, because obviously we have to do this. I know it sounds tedious. It's like, why are we doing it? We have to. Because people don't understand 1 plus 1 is 2 unless you give them an apple and an orange. Unless they use their fingers. So we have to do it this way. Read what you got.
Verse 31. And God saw everything that he had made. And behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the 6th day.
Now go to Genesis chapter 2, verse 2.
Genesis chapter 2, verse 2. And on the 7th day, God ended his work which he had made. And he rested on the 7th day from all his works which he had made.
Now, does it really take a rocket scientist, a nuclear physicist, to say that that 7th day was evening and the morning, and that was the 7th day? Considering the fact that every other day that preceded it was the evening and the morning, and the evening and the morning, and the evening and the morning. But when you get to the 7th day, somehow a day or how days are calculated switches up. Right. Okay. All right. Watch this. I know what it don't say. It don't say that the daytime was the 7th day. That's what it don't say. I'm sure of that. It don't say that. All right. Now, so, let's get some clarification, right? Our people believe that evening and the morning are 2 separate halves of a day, with daylight hours with a break in between noon or late afternoon. And that's how people look at days. That's because Babylon, remember what we read in Daniel? They was going to seek to change what? Times and laws. All right? So this is how we end up with this upside down thinking that a day, they tell you that a day started at midnight. 12 a.m., really? That's when it starts. In the middle of the night. Okay. No. No, not at all. All right, watch this. Go back to the 4th day real quick. Genesis 1, verse 14.
Verse 14 of Genesis chapter 1. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night. And let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years.
Drop down to verse 17.
Verse 17. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth.
Come on.
And to rule over the day and over the night. And to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good.
So we going based on our own understanding, our definitions of evenings and mornings. Okay. And how society has broken them down for us and caused us to believe. How do you explain the evening and the mornings that occurred days 1 through 3? See what I'm saying? When there was no sun or moon. That also lays down the whole thing with the Sabbath being based on the moon. The moon comes into existence on day 4. 3 days later, God rests. Why he didn't wait 7 days to rest? Or 8 days, according to their Lunar Sabbath doctrine. It's foolishness, man. Come on, y'all. All right. Now, from there, go to Psalms chapter 90. No, actually, skip that. Stay in Genesis. Go to Genesis 5. 5 and 5. Because I'm going to go back to 90. Because Psalms chapter 90, grab that also. I'm getting ready to make a parallel here real quick. Psalms chapter 90, I want verse 1 through 3. Psalms chapter 90, verse 1 through 3.
Psalms chapter 90, verses 1. Lord, thou hast been our dwelling place in all generations, before the mountains were brought forth, or ever thou hast formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, thou art God. Thou turnest man to destruction, and sayest, return ye children of men.
Turn men to destruction, now you say return. Come on.
For 1,000 years in thy sight are but as yesterday.
You see that? 1,000 years to the Most High, that's just like yesterday. Nice. Oh, that was yesterday. To us, we like, yo, that's a long time. The Most High, that was just yesterday. Go ahead.
When it is past, and as a watch in the night.
So, 1,000 years to the Most High is yesterday. One of the Most High's days is equal to 1,000 of man's days. All right? Remember, now I go to Genesis 5. Remember what the Most High told Adam. When he told Adam, he said, in that day, you shall surely die, right? When they went to go party. If you're going to go and do this, you're going against what my will is. In that day, you shall surely die. It ain't mean right then and there you're going to drop dead on the spot. I'm going to tell you what it meant. Read Genesis chapter 5, verse 5.
Genesis chapter 5, verse 5. And all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died.
So he lived 70 years less than one of the Most High's days. In that day you shall die. You ain't going no further than that. He lived 930 years. 70 years less than what the Most High sees as a day. So when he says in that day, he wasn't talking about day, he was talking about in one of his days. That 1,000-year time span. That was an example. I wanted to show y'all that parallel. Okay? So we can't compare our days literally to those of the Most High. But we do know that the Sabbath is from sundown to sundown, from evening to evening. We do know that the Sabbath is not from sunrise to sunset. That's stupidity. Exodus chapter 16, verse 23. Watch this. Let's find out if the Sabbath starts in the morning time. This is how simple it is, brothers and sisters. I want y'all to see this. This is how simple it is. Somebody say, man, the Sabbath ain't from evening to evening. Take them right here. Watch this. 16 verse 23.
Exodus chapter 16.